Is this thing on? Can you guys hear me? Welcome to another episode of Unscripted. We're going through Proverbs 20 today. 3,000-year-old wisdom that is still applicable. That is a mouthful today in your leadership, your culture, your systems, but also in your relationships and just in your life. I want to give a big shout out to Alabama. My buddy Robert Brown is in Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and he took me to my first Alabama game. It was an LSU game. LSU, Alabama, they were number 1, number 2, and my brother and I got to go there, and that's why I had the jacket on today. So big shout out to Robert Brown and to my hero, my best friend in the world, Mr. Rob Cardenas. Big Rob. I want to thank you guys for coming on to Unscripted. It has been an absolute phenomenal journey. I've been learning so much in this study, corresponding proverb, corresponding day. I wanted to be able to dive into this because I've been doing this for 30 years, and then I just wanted to share it. And I'm sharing what I'm learning. I'm not trying to preach to you, anything like that. I'm not a Bible scholar, although I have been studying it for 30 years, and I've been applying it in my life, and it has been unbelievable. Not always good, but it's been unbelievable. So welcome to another episode, and I thank you for rocking with the podcast. Let's get this party started.
Cause we believin', it's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. That commercial gives me chills every single time I watch it. It's the Vibe Room. It's a live version of the podcast. People have been asking me, are you still going to be interviewing people on the podcast? You've been doing a lot of commentary. Absolutely. I've got Lee Steinberg coming on very soon, actually next week, which is going to be amazing. He's the #1 sports agent in the world. The movie Jerry Maguire was made after him, and he has a client that he signed. Oh, I don't know if you guys know who he is. Patrick Mahomes. So we're going to be talking football leading into the Super Bowl and going to a Super Bowl party with my big brother and my hero in Las Vegas. Lee Steinberg is going to be on the show. So, but I wanted to go through the study of Proverbs, the corresponding proverb, the corresponding day, because it's something that I wanted to share with every single one of you, but also too, this has just been a project for me that I've been the most proud of anything that I've ever produced, because it's wisdom that is 3,000 years old and it's principle-based, so it won't ever time out. And you know what, Maddox and McKenna, when you guys finally watch the podcast at some point, you'll see that this stuff is unbelievable. In today's episode, we're going to be working with or working on wisdom, righteousness, understanding, love, faithfulness, and strength. Think of that. Wisdom, righteousness, understanding, love, faithfulness, and strength. And the cool thing is today we've got three major points that we're going to go through, and we want to hit on it, which is keeping a sober mind, testing your heart, and then filling your heart with love. And in these episodes, what I want to let you know, if this is the first time, this is not me coming and preaching at you or anything like that. What it is just sharing some things that have worked out amazing for me. I came upon this one time reading a book, and it said that if you read the corresponding proverb, corresponding day for a year straight, 365 days, it'll triple your income. Well, it piqued my interest. It wasn't just about the income, but I was like, well, what if it could, right? And I started in on the journey, and it wasn't about just the income. What it was about laying the foundation to be able to build the income, and, build it, keep it, and then, grow it later on. But it wasn't just the income as far as wealth or money. It was the income, and it was the wealth of your heart, your spirit, your foundation, your family. So it's amazing. So let's jump right in. Keep a sober mind, test your heart, fill your spirit with love. First one is keep a sober mind. In this, in verse 1, it jumps right into it. In Proverbs 20, verse 1, wine is a mocker and beer is a brawler. Whoever is led astray by them is not wise. And when I read this at first, I thought, wow, that's pretty judgmental because my wife drinks wine, my brother drinks wine, my brother drinks beer, and he's not bad. But what it was saying is it wasn't talking about the physical. What God was talking about in this and what Solomon was sharing was that it was about that wine or beer, anything that took your mind into a different place, and it wasn't about the alcohol. Some people just look at it just for that, but it was saying just be in a sober mind, be clear. For me, it took the judgment out of it because I grew up with alcoholism. I grew up with, family drinking, things like that. And when I read this, I was like, man, you're judging my whole entire family. You can't have a good time. No, it's saying about your mind. Don't let anything deter your mind or take your mind away from that focus on your relationship with God. So that's keep a sober mind. And there's 3 points in this, which is the first one is avoid strife. Avoid strife comes from verse 3. It is one's honor to avoid strife, but every fool is quick to quarrel. Think of that, right? If you want to stop the fire, take the fuel off of it. If you want to stop the fire, take the oxygen out of it. If you want to stop the fire, take the heat out of it. Those are the only 3 elements of fire. If you take one of them, it breaks what's called the fire triangle, and the fire won't burn anymore. So it's either the oxygen that you're breathing into it, talking about it. It's the fuel of, your thoughts, or simply the heat or the friction that is causing in your life. You stop that, you stop the fire. Let's go into point number 2, which is diligent work. Diligent work in this is sluggards, verse 4, sluggards do not plow in season. So at harvest time, they look but find nothing. It's very simple, right? When we do right work, then we get right results. It doesn't mean we get it at the right time that we think it is. It's the right time that God has it to be. Remember, it's God's will, it's his plan, and it's his timing. But in this keeping a sober mind, make sure that you avoid strife, that you do diligent work, and lastly, that you seek counsel. And in verse 5, it says, the purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. So seek counsel, right? Let me read it again. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. How do you gain insight? Well, let's go back to it. Respect or fear of God gives you wisdom, which is the right use of knowledge. Then it gives you knowledge. Then it gives you insight. So if you want insight, fear God, right? And then seek out counsel, people that will lift you up and draw those things out. Let's move on to the second point of today, which is test your heart. Test your heart, test your heart, test your heart. So this is verse 6 through 23. If you read this, read all those verses because it really tests your heart and it looks at it. But we're just going to hit on a couple of them today. Point number 1 in test your heart is humility. In verse number 9, it says, who can say, I have kept my heart pure, I am clean and without sin? Well, I could tell you, nobody, because all of us fall short of the glory of God. We do, and that's the reason why we need him. That's the reason why we need to rely on him, and that's the reason why we need grace. And so that's what God tells us that he'll give us, is he'll give us that grace, and he's just going to wipe away the sin. It doesn't mean that we have to be perfect, but it's amazing because who can say, this is verse 9, who can say, I have kept my heart pure, I am clean and without sin? Not a person on this earth. And if you get to that point, honestly, you probably won't be on this earth anymore. You'll probably be in heaven because you're perfect. And none of us are. So be okay with that and have humility. Number 2 is honesty and testing your heart. Honesty comes from verse 14. It is no good. It is no good, says the buyer, then goes off and boasts about their purchase. How many times have we done this, right? We've negotiated and we've been like, oh, your product is garbage. Give it to me for less. And then when we got it for less, then we went to our friends and we were like, you know what? Check out the deal that I got. Well, check this out, guys. You got to be honest. Pay the value. It doesn't mean you don't negotiate and be a good negotiator, but the greatest negotiation in the world is when both people win. Because then what it does is unlocks a relationship which will create an unlimited amount of deals. But if you take advantage of people and you're dishonest in your dealings and in your negotiation, what will happen is it'll just be a one-off event. Number 3 in practice or in test your heart is just patience. And this is in verse 21. An inheritance claimed too soon will not be blessed in the end. And then in verse 24, it says, a person's steps are directed by the Lord. How then can anyone understand their own way? This was my dad's verse, my pops. And so this hit me hard. I almost cried this morning because I sat on the beach with him and I was reading this verse over and over again because it's what he constantly told me. In verse 24, a person's steps are directed by the Lord. How then can anyone understand their own way? It's God's will, it's God's plan, and it's God's timing. And when you allow that to happen, the magic happens around you. And people say, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. You got a golden horseshoe or all great things. No. Give it up to him. It doesn't mean that you're not smart with the knowledge that he gives you, but seek him first. Don't go out and do things. Ask him to bless it. Ask him to lead and guide you into what he would have you to do. And you're not going to have to worry about asking him, can you bless it? I've done this so many times in my life. Lord, can you just help me through this one thing? And he asked me, what is it, son? This one thing that I did on my own, can you bless it? Well, if it's not of me, I can't bless it. That's what he keeps telling me. So let's go on to point number 3, which is fill your spirit with love. This was my pops. Again, I'm gonna tell you this. My pops was huge on this, and I'm gonna go back to verse 24. It says, "A person's steps are directed by the Lord. How then can anyone understand their own way?" Fill your heart, or fill your spirit with love. Fill your spirit with love. And so when that happens, a person's steps are directed by the Lord. How then can anyone understand their own way? When you depend on God and you fill your spirit with God, what happens is God is love. That's what my wife told me. God is love. So when you fill your heart with, or fill your spirit with God, you fill your spirit with love. And that's what my pops was saying. This is 3 points in this. Foundation, number 1 is verse 27. The human spirit is the lamp of the Lord that sheds light on one's innermost being. Think of that. A firm foundation, right? The human spirit is the lamp of the Lord that sheds light on one's innermost being. God knows what's inside your heart. He knows what's inside your spirit, and your spirit will shine light on that. So focus in on that. Build a firm foundation. Number 2 is protection. So this is verse 28. In verse 28, it says, love and faithfulness keep a king safe. Through love, his throne is made secure. It did not say anything about strength, armies, ingenuity, negotiation, anything like that. It said love and faithfulness. And then it went back to it. Love, his throne is made secure. So realize that the protection that you need comes from the love that you have in your heart. When you fill your spirit up with love, it will protect you at all costs. And then finally, the last point of today is number 3 is strength, and it's verse 29. And it says, the glory of young men is their strength, and gray hair, the splendor of the old. And when I looked at this, what I thought about was social media. Think about it. When you're in your 20s, you're trying to prove to the world, like, I could do this. Then in your 30s, you're trying to prove to yourself, I could do this. In your 40s, you start to not care. And in your 50s, you ain't trying to prove nothing to nobody. And when we look at this in verse 29, the glory of young men is their strength. That's what they're locked into. How strong can I be? But look at verse 28. Love and faithfulness keep a king safe, right? And gray hair is the splendor of the old. And so watch this. So when you have gray hair, it means that you had time, that you were patient, and that you earned those things. And so there's nothing that can stand in the way of hard work and time. And as we finish today, guys, keep a sober mind, test your heart, and fill your spirit with love. To respect God, you must understand his character. And once you do that, you will be overwhelmed by his mercy, his grace, and his love. This has been Proverbs 20, the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It's amazing that 3,000-year-old wisdom is applicable today. And if you build your house on solid ground, when the storm comes, you won't have challenges. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being on Unscripted. My name is Kelly Cardenas, your host, and I hope that you have subscribed and turn on the notifications so you know that we're coming. I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.